Canceling often happens to celebrities or public figures, and in these cases,
Canceling seems to happen all too often these days, especially when it comes to celebrities and public figures. When someone is canceled, it generally means there's a movement to remove their public platform or damage their career. But what happens when someone refuses to be silenced? That's exactly where we find Dr. Phil, the famous psychologist and American TV host, who's now in the fight of his life with woke Hollywood. You won't believe the huge firestorm he's facing, or what he's saying in response to cancel culture. Dr. Phil, known for his no-nonsense approach, is taking on today's most controversial topics, from the complexities of gender pronouns to the broader debates surrounding Hollywood's woke agenda.
I'm particularly concerned about this woke agenda that's being pushed.
Agreed.
Right now. I'm concerned about what's happening in American colleges right now.
Suddenly, he's the latest public figure under attack by both Hollywood and social media giants. But why? What triggered this battle? It all began when Dr. Phil decided to question the culture of fear that seems to have taken hold of America. He's particularly concerned with what he calls the woke agenda, which he believes is being pushed on society, especially in academic institutions. He's not afraid to voice his concerns, even when those views put him at odds with some of the loudest voices in the room. His unapologetic stance is causing quite the uproar. In an episode of his show, Dr. Phil sat down with a group of parents who were concerned about the impact of teaching gender pronouns to young children.
To explore and express themselves.
And you say that this is appropriate beginning in kindergarten.
These parents felt that introducing complex topics like gender identity to kids before they've even grasped basic biology was a step too far. Dr. Phil listened carefully to their concerns before jumping into the conversation himself, asking pointed questions about the logic behind teaching gender fluidity to such young children.
You say that 12 is the age that you should be talking to children about gender.
You're saying it's appropriate to begin these discussions in kindergarten? He asked, challenging the prevailing opinion in the room. The audience response was mixed, with some applauding and others clearly uncomfortable. The discussion heated up when a fifth-grade teacher joined the panel, armed with scientific arguments to defend not teaching children about gender identity.
Productive organs you have. Gender is what you identify with. They're completely
Well, I don't
different
accept
things.
that distinction. You have to argue for it. You're just giving a conclusion. You're just making it up. And then there are 1 or 2% the transgender dysphoria persists into adulthood.
The pushback was immediate. Activists in the audience argued that gender is a social construct and that refusing to acknowledge someone's chosen identity is harmful.
Being hateful when you tell somebody that identifies as a man that they're not a man.
That's not hateful. That's a fact.
Dr. Phil didn't back down. He calmly pointed out that while we can debate how we identify, biological facts remain unchanged. Ignoring biological facts doesn't change them, no matter how much you want to, he argued.
Well, the question is, by being more trans-inclusive, are we erasing cisgender women, or as you were just saying, just woman, people whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth?
The debate left the audience polarized. Some nodded in agreement, while others shook their heads in disbelief.
The woman in a manner that it is not true that a male person could ever be a woman.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
So your gender identity, though, you just described yourself as a woman who can have babies. That is a gender identity, just as my trans and non-binary identity is a gender identity. Just because it goes against the norms doesn't mean that your identity isn't any less.
As clips from the episode went viral, the backlash from social media was swift. Hashtags began trending, and Hollywood figures quickly distanced themselves from Dr. Phil's stance. But true to form, Dr. Phil remained unfazed by the criticism. And this wasn't the first time Dr. Phil took on woke ideology. In another episode, he criticized the entire concept of cancel culture. He pointed out how people today are terrified to say what they really think, for fear of being attacked online.
But unless you're speaking from a place of love, I think you should just keep it to yourself.
And if you disagree, I mean, you can say so, but you can do it respectfully, right?
Right.
According to a recent statistic he shared, 62% of Americans admit they're afraid to express their opinions. Let that sink in. Over half the country is walking on eggshells, worried that they might say something that will get them canceled. This culture of fear, Dr. Phil believes, is doing real damage to society.
But I do not agree with them firing you for it. everything that happens, every opinion that we make, every mistake that we make is a teachable lesson. They should have, if they had a problem with you making TikTok videos, they should have had that energy from the beginning and let you know, hey, you shouldn't be doing this in your uniform. That's not protocol. And then, you get talked to, you get a warning, you don't do it anymore. This situation would have never happened because it is a sensitive issue, the time and place to say what we say.
We're too quick to attack each other instead of having real conversations, he said. How can we solve anything if people are constantly scared to speak up? The audience roared with applause. It was clear that Dr. Phil's message was resonating with those who are tired of tiptoeing around sensitive topics. But it's not just cancel culture that has Dr. Phil fired up. He's also going after Hollywood's woke agenda. In a particularly heated episode, Dr. Phil clashed with a professor who was passionately defending the idea of cultural appropriation.
They're all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation.
According to the professor, using styles, foods, or fashion from another culture without permission is harmful. But Dr. Phil saw things differently. Calling everything cultural appropriation just creates unnecessary divisions between people, he argued. He pointed out that many instances of so-called appropriation are really just examples of cultural appreciation.
Okay, but a lot of the time that people that I've seen are called out for this, it's not that they were making fun or mocking in some way. It was just that they had adopted a fashion or a style.
The debate quickly escalated into a full-blown cultural clash. The professor insisted that protecting minority cultures from being stolen was essential, while Dr. Phil maintained that labeling every cultural exchange as appropriation only serves to create more tension. Imitation can be a form of flattery, Dr. Phil stated. We're all influenced by each other's cultures, and that's not a bad thing. Once again, the audience was divided.
Any one human being to keep on top of that throughout their entire life, I think, is an unrealistic ask. And I think imitation is a form of flattery. I appreciate my food by eating it. I appreciate the hair that I wear by wearing it, by putting on the clothes that I wear. And every single item around us in this room could probably be attributed to a certain culture.
Some cheered his blunt honesty, while others gasped in disbelief. But Dr. Phil remained calm and composed, ready for the next round. In yet another episode, Dr. Phil turned his attention to corporate America and Hollywood, calling out what he views as their empty gestures of diversity.
Okay, so that means you're trying to create equality of outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hear you saying about playing God.
Yeah.
How do you create equality of outcome?
A lot of these companies are just ticking boxes, he said. They're more interested in seeming woke than in actually making meaningful changes. He criticized businesses for adopting diversity initiatives that are more about appearances than substance.
That's what one of the big criticisms is that it's what it looks like, that there's diversity of bodies, that you've got a certain number of one from a certain race, another race, another race. Has nothing to do with diversity of ideology, has nothing to do with diversity of background. It has to do with quotas.
Right.
If you're just putting on a show, you're not solving anything, Dr. Phil said bluntly. His words hit home for many, exposing the hypocrisy of companies that preach inclusivity while doing the bare minimum to back it up. The backlash from his remarks has been intense, with some social media platforms even attempting to censor clips from his show. Critics have accused him of being out of touch with today's progressive ideals. But instead of backing down, Dr. Phil has only doubled down on his stance. In one of the most intense moments of his show, Dr. Phil addressed his critics directly. If facts make you this upset, maybe reality isn't your strong suit, he said. The audience roared in approval. Despite facing opposition from some of Hollywood's biggest names, Dr. Phil remained steadfast in his fight.
We're on two sides of a table like this, and we're negotiating. Let's talk about what we agree on first, because, if you really spend time to do that, you're sometimes surprised at how little you really disagree on.
Right. I find that all the time.
Yeah, if you get the left and the right and talk about what we agree on, everybody would agree we want America to be the number one country in the world. We want to be the leading superpower, the leading educational power.
He's standing up for free speech and pushing back against what he sees as the extremes of woke and cancel culture. Will his bold stance inspire others to speak out, or will he end up paying the price for his unfiltered opinions? Only time will tell. What's clear is that Dr. Phil isn't backing down anytime soon. So what do you think? Is Dr. Phil right to challenge Hollywood's woke agenda, or is he pushing the envelope too far? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.